Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here, and welcome back to the workbench for this, the second part of the build with me Supermarine Spitfire Mark 1 from Airfix. In the previous episode, we started this kit and we got as far as this stage here with our model assembled with the interior parts all inside and the fuselage closed up. In this episode, we're going to complete the majority of the assembly. So stick around and join in as we get stuck in with this build with me Supermarine Spitfire Mark 1 from Airfix. So as mentioned in the previous episode, this is aimed more at beginners and intermediate modelers. We're using some simple techniques. And if you don't have everything that I've got here, feel free to substitute or make do with what you do have available. But for the most part, we're going to be using some very simple skills and techniques to complete our model. If you haven't seen the previous episode, do go back and make sure you've checked that one out. So for now though, we have assembled our aircraft and we need to get stuck in with finishing all of these parts off. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut away all the parts that I need from the sprue, but making sure that I remember or do things in order so I don't get them confused. So what I'm probably going to do first is start off with the tail surfaces. So I need B34, and just as before in the previous video, all of the parts are going to be snipped off the sprue with my cutter here. Any rough bits of plastic are then going to be sanded down just to make sure that we have some nice smooth parts with no excess plastic on them. This will help to ensure that we don't have tight fit or things that don't go in the right place. So I'm pretty sure, I'll probably put that on the wrong way, B34 goes on the other side. So we need to make sure we put them into the correct holes like that. As in the previous episode, we're using the tube glue that came in the kit. For the larger areas, you can just put it straight onto the parts that you want it to go onto. But for finer application, a cocktail stick would be a very helpful tool. So let's get these tail surfaces built up. Not a very long process. It's not a very big kit, really. Airfix have done quite a good job with this kit. I know this is like a 2010 tooling, so it's not one of their most recent kits, and people do say, oh, it's got really deep panel lines, it's not the most detailed of kits out there in the world, which is true. It is what it is. It was a fairly simple Spitfire model kit, but it was much better than their previous offerings. It is one of the older kits in the Airfix range now though, which will probably see a retooling at some point in the future. So up next is the rudder part. Again, snipping it away. A little bit of sanding just to improve the fit. Run some cement along the join area. And the rudder here has been designed so that if you wanted to position it at a different angle rather than straight on, so the rudder moves like that in real life, bear in mind whichever position you put it in, it will glue in that position. But I'm going to have mine straight forwards, but you could put yours in a different way if you wanted to. So that's those bits. I'm going to, shall I put them on? Normally I don't put the engine exhausts on. I paint them separately, but this is a fairly simple kit, so I probably could paint them on the model. So let's just stick them on and see how we get on with that. It just takes some careful painting. So number 22 goes on the port side of the model. Let's make sure we don't lose it. And it's got these little pins in it to make sure it goes. Oh no, bent it. So be careful when you're doing that. It's got a very thin joints there between the exhaust parts. It's very thin, so just be super careful. And I do think I need my cocktail stick for this because a very small bit of glue on there, a bit of cement, and then run that down the insides of there. Be careful not to get the glue in the wrong places. You don't want it to melt too much plastic. And then stick it in. Done. Like I said in the previous episode, some tweezers might be a handy tool to help you build your model, but I haven't used any yet. Haven't really felt the need to use any. And then the one on the starboard side goes in as well. I mean, Airfix have done a good job of designing this. Everything fits together really nicely. There we go. So now our engine, exhaust, and our tail surfaces are on. One small point about the tail surfaces I probably should have mentioned earlier is try to get them horizontal so that they don't look like they're drooping to one side or another. Right, so that's that. Next are your wing surfaces. So let's get those off of the sprue. Clip. And again, just sand down those areas where we've removed them, just to make our assembly a little bit easier. And in the instructions, it does actually say to paint the inside area here black where the gun ports are. I haven't bothered on previous builds. I understand why they've done it. It's because these gun ports are visible, but they're not like hugely visible. I mean, I could be tempted to do that later. If it does bug me, I'll probably go back and do it later. Just put a little bit of black paint in each one after it's built. If you want to paint the insides black, absolutely feel free, but I don't see the need at the moment to do so. And I think the best way to do this, it doesn't really say in the instructions, it just says put everything together. So you can put it on first, and then I think that's probably the best way to do it, is put the bottom wing on first. So we'll run some glue along that. A little bit of glue in there, a tiny bit of glue there, and then down here on the back bit there, up the side there. So we'll put the bottom wing on first, and then we will join the upper wings. Just make sure you align it correctly, get everything nice and snug, and then we move on to our upper wings. And it's quite easy to do these. They can only go on one side. There we go. And you want to make sure that you get the seam down the wing root here nice and smooth, nice and flush, so that we don't have any gaps. And that one's gone on really well. Just press it together until the glue cures, and then repeat the process on the other side. Press that one into place as well. It may take a little bit of persuasion. That one doesn't quite want to go in. There is a mounting point on there, so you just need to make sure you put a little bit of pressure on. Be careful with the glue. Don't use too much, because sticky fingerprints on the outside of the model are less than ideal. But yeah, that's come out all right. So now we need to focus on the lower side of the model. There are some details which need to be added. And it's kind of up to you a little bit whether you want to have your landing gear raised or lowered. My advice would be to leave the landing gear off until the end of the build, purely because it's easier to paint the internal areas and to paint the wheels if you want to have them separate. But you need to decide at this point what you're going to do, because if you don't, then, well, you might skip a step, you might miss something. Also, remember that you can't go back and change it once you've done it. These get glued in, and they're very difficult to remove once you've done that. So it's down or raised, and you need to kind of decide. I'm going to have mine in the down position because it is a little bit more difficult. For raised, you just put one part in, you paint that bit black, and the rest of it's the same color as the underside of the model, and it's done. But for down, there is a wheel that you need to add. So I'm going to have mine in the down position. I am going to add the rest of the parts apart from the clear part, because the clear parts will go on at the very end of the build in the final episode. But everything else will be added onto the model now, more or less. So let's get on with that. So on the bottom of your aircraft, you've got a couple of positions for a few different bits and pieces. So this one on the left of the camera is an engine air intake radiator. So that's the wrong way around. Make sure you put it the right way around, and it just slots into its little hole like that. Then moving on, we've got another air intake over here. I think it's the oil cooler. That's the longer part like that. Make sure again that goes on the right way around. It should technically only fit in one way. Then, once you've done that, it's this little air intake underneath here. So just put a little bit of glue. This comes in two parts. It goes into a little slot like that, and then there is another part which is just the front of it, which is a tiny little part, but it slots on as well like that. So yeah, just be super careful with that piece. It is very small. Again, tweezers might have been handy there, but I've had no issues. The tail wheel goes in its little hole at the back of the aircraft there. Make sure you put that one the right way round. Should only go in one way really. And make sure you push it in correctly so that it's in far enough. That is right. And then, so we have on the bottom here the pitot tube. Make sure we don't lose that. So the pitot tube goes onto this small hole on the end of the wing. This is that's the left wing, so it's the port wing, but obviously it's on the right hand side of the camera at the moment, so it's a little bit complicated, but yeah, that's the side it goes in. This is a small and fiddly part. Now that we're adding these small parts, you need to make sure that you're being careful whilst you're handling the model so you don't knock anything off as we go through the next few steps. Just make sure you push that one in. That should go in quite far. So the pitot tube measures air pressure, and by measuring the air pressure it measures the speed of the aircraft, which is quite fascinating. And that is the bottom of the model done for now. So landing gear will be done in a later episode. Clear landing light there, that will be done in another episode. Clear cockpit, that will be added probably in the final episode. And our final part to add today is the antenna aerial. There we go. So, well, this is the mast for the aerial. The aerial wire would run between here and here. And we may even add the aerial wire later as an extra. So that is our aircraft, probably about 98% built. So that's as far as we're going to take it in this episode today. I hope you've enjoyed it, possibly learned something new, or at the very least I've helped you complete your model. Let me know down in the comments, how are you building yours? Are you building yours with the wheels down or with your wheels raised? In the next episode, we're going to be focusing on painting our aircraft. As always, quick shout out to my channel members and patrons. Massive thanks to these guys on screen for the support they give my channel. If you'd like to join them, take a look at the links in the description. If you enjoyed this one, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. And if you're new here, subscribing with notifications on will mean you never miss a modelling upload. Finally, all that's left to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.